Takumi was a disgusting, worthless nobody until one day, a wind god accidentally unalived him and out of pity, blessed him with overpowered skills and yeeted him into a fantasy world filled with dangerous monsters, along with a full-time daddy job and 2 ugly twins to care for. But before all of this, poor confused Takumi was standing in front of the wind god Sil, who was on his knees and apologizing his ass for accidentally unaliving him. Takumi was pretty confused about the whole situation, but given that he was an average loser in Japan anyway, he didn't care. Now in the new land of Ateldia, Takumi is walking around a forest with his new insanely OP language skills as well as crazy traits and items while beating the crap out of some red wolves. Out of nowhere, he stumbles onto some random blue-haired kids behind a tree, looking pretty scared. He tries talking to them, but they seem pretty clueless about where they are and super hungry, so he gives them some massive peaches that he found in his inventory to snack on. Once they start eating, the kids go full-on monkey mode and gobble the peaches in an instant. Takumi quickly realizes that their outfits are pretty mid, so he gives them some new ones to level up their drip. Takumi decides that it's daddy time and keeps the kids, and they start walking through the forest together. Very soon, they come across some random NPC-looking boar mobs, and just as Takumi starts trying to produce some jutsus, the kids run into the boars and start beating the living crap out of them. In a few seconds, the boars are pulverized, and Takumi realizes that the kids might just have a chance of winning the world's strongest man competition because they are mega strong. Takumi finds them pretty cute and decides to name them Alan and Alina, given that one of them is a boy and the other is a girl. After night falls, the Gordon Ramsay wannabe Takumi whips out some more food from his inventory and makes him and the kids some kebabs, and after they finish eating they decide to call it a night. The very next day, Takumi and his new kiddos stumble upon a random town. At the entrance into the town, Takumi quickly gets a PhD in lying and starts spewing straight bullshit at the guards, telling them that he is from a random village and that he was gathering herbs. The guards realize that they are completely clueless, so the main guard takes them to a room so they can get their new IDs and confirm that they aren't filthy criminals. After entering the town, Takumi and the 2 kids go to the church so Takumi can talk to Sil and get some info on what he's meant to do in this new world. Sil informs him that he is basically supposed to be a babysitter for these 2 kids, but he is acting all mysterious and refuses to tell Takumi the whole story. He also explains that there are 5 gods in this world, with Mariobella being the creation goddess. Takumi has once again got almost no info from this master of uselessness, but he decides that he is going to take care of the kids after all, and he takes them to find a tavern so they can sleep in an actual bed instead of under a random tree. They go to the inn, and the kids have never been happier in their short little lives. They immediately start jumping on the bed, but given that they're about 3 feet tall, they don't really have a whole lot of energy, so they get super tired real quick and all 3 of them fall asleep. The following morning, Takumi and the kids go to the Adventurer Guild to register as adventurers. The chick at the guild gives them a quick lore dump on how adventuring works in this world, and Takumi, Alan, and Alina register together and form a party called the White Wings. Immediately they go to take a look at the quests available, and even though he has already seen them kick some boar ass, Takumi still thinks that the kids are weak since they are kids after all, and they take up an easy quest to collect some herbs. A few hours later, they are already in the forest, and the kids very quickly start beating up some slimes. By the time worthless Takumi collected only a few of these herbs, the absolute talent houses Alan and Alina had already collected 1 million of them. They immediately go back and bring the pile to the girl working at the guild so they can receive their reward. Just as they were about to get their reward, a worthless dude, so ugly that he could probably win some ugly competitions, starts yapping and talking about how the kids are not supposed to be in the guild, so the kids promptly begin beating the crap out of him. Takumi has to stop the 2 little boxing champions from unaliving the dude, and the kids start crying because they think their newfound daddy is angry with them and is about to leave. At that time, the knight from the gate, named Loane, comes into the guild and asks around about what's going on. He starts asking Takumi about how he came into this very sus situation to be around 2 random kids that he isn't related to. Takumi explains that he found them in the dangerous forest of Gaia, and Loane and the girl from the guild get flabbergasted. They all come up with a theory that the kids must have been dropped out as decoys from traders who were using them as merch so they could escape the forest. Loane accepts this explanation and sees that the kids are pretty chill and happy about being with him, so he approves of Takumi becoming their new daddy. Just then, the girl from the guild gets mega thirsty for Takumi's Giga Chad skills and his juicy saucy merch, so she asks him to sell it to her. After this, Loane asks Takumi to join him in the nights and smacking up some monster butts in the forest of Gaia. But Takumi gets scared shitless because he realizes that he is only an F-rank adventurer. However, Loane doesn't care at all, and he thinks that Takumi will surely be able to handle the forest since he has already been there and has unalived some monsters too. While Takumi is having an existential crisis, Loane goes to the guild master to tell him about the incredible potential of the new wannabe daddy Takumi. A month later, Takumi and the gang have been progressing amazingly, taking on a couple of quests every day with a day off every 2 days. Alan and Alina have stopped being disgusting forest children and have learned some manners. One day, while eating breakfast, Takumi realizes that the bread they have tastes pretty much like an old smelly shoe, so he just decides to go to the bakery and make some bussin' pastries himself. When they get to the bakery, Takumi asks the baker and his daughter if he himself could make some new pastries with custard cream and red bean paste he whipped out of his inventory. The baker has no idea what is going on, so Takumi goes full Gordon Ramsay mode and explains how to make them, so they all start making the little pastries together. After a little magic and time, the pastries are done, and the entire room of people starts salivating and gobbling the pastries like they are the tastiest thing in the world. The baker liked them so much that he immediately asked Takumi to give him the right to sell the pastries and even promised that he would pay him. Takumi says that his hungry ass just wanted some pastries and has no intention of getting rich and famous. The next day, Takumi and the kids go to the guild, and Takumi realizes he has become slightly less useless and is now at level 13. The girl at the guild tells Takumi that he should try to go to a labyrinth, which is basically a dungeon with a whole bunch of monsters. This gets the kids super excited because they know that they are about to smack up some more monsters, so they go to a nearby dungeon with 15 floors. A few hours later, at the dungeon, they are going through the first floor, and Alan and Alina are basically living GPSs, and they are navigating Takumi through the dungeon like crazy. Very soon, they stumble upon a random mole, and the kids decide to start playing whack-a-mole and pulverize it instantly. The mole drops some loot in the shape of a mole whisker, which they pick up just in case it has some weird use. They continue their journey through the labyrinth and decide to call it a day. Of course, the most useless adventurer chef wannabe in the world, Takumi, first decides to whip out a stove and cook them a meal, after which they go to sleep. A few days later, after clearing out a bunch of floors, they reach a hidden room with a treasure chest, which Takumi checks first to make sure it isn't booby-trapped. Inside, they find 2 potions, and at just that moment, a massive ape attacks them. This is no problem for the 2 little Chuck Norrises, and they quickly make him one with a nearby wall. After continuing their journey through the dungeon, they fight some snakes and bees, and the kids absolutely destroy the pesky bees. Very quickly, they realize that bees drop honey when unalived, so they go and pulverize a bunch of them to get as much honey as possible so Takumi can whip up some more bussin' meals. Once they have gathered some more, he starts whisking and making some sauces like the true Michelin chef he is, and makes some epic looking French toast, which they all gobble up. After a long time, they finally come to the boss room, and the boss turns out to be some pretty useless earthworm, which Takumi solos in only a few minutes with his OP air magic that Syl has given him. In the next room, they find the teleporter to go home and a few grenades in a treasure chest, which the kids decide to use to play catch, and Takumi almost gets a heart attack. They finally get out of the dungeon, only to find a massive white wolf looking at them like he is about to make them his 5-star restaurant breakfast. Takumi uses his off-brand Pokédex and realizes that the animal is actually an S-rank beast that is contracted to him. He immediately thinks that Syl must be behind this and asks the animal if this is the case. The wolf basically acts like a wholesome doggo, and he starts giving Takumi his paw and sitting down on command. The kids get really jealous that Takumi's attention is concentrated on the doggo, so they start behaving like little doggos, and they try to get Takumi to ask them for their paws as well. Soon enough, they all start hugging, and the kids can't get enough of the doggo's soft fur, so they name him Jewel. Takumi laughs it off, and they start heading back towards the town, very quickly realizing that the people in their town will probably soil their pants if they see a massive wolf walking around town, so he asks Jewel if he could hide in his shadow. After reaching the town, Takumi goes to the church to talk to Syl about Jewel. but Syl gets all pissed and tells him that it was actually the water god that gave Jewel to him as thanks for taking care of the kids. Syl starts yapping too much and giving too much away, but Takumi is a pretty smart dude, so he realizes that the kids must have something to do with the water god. Later that night, they go back to their inn to finally sleep on a bed instead of on the hard cave floor, and they all decide to sleep together. The very next day, Takumi and the kids find a massive heavenly tiger and a thunder hawk waiting for them, and Takumi figures out that these are now the summons Syl sent to him. Takumi comes up with the names for them, naming the tiger Feet and the hawk Bolt. The kids love the names, and Takumi remembers that Syl also put some collars into his inventory which will allow the animals to shrink to cute little friendly sizes so the people in the town don't get scared shitless. Being the jealous little brats they are, the kids also ask for collars for them, and Takumi realizes that he will probably go to jail in a few seconds, even in this world, if he puts animal collars on a pair of kids, so he whips out a pair of cute necklaces instead. On top of that, he gives them a little bag, which acts as a tiny bit of inventory space. After going into town, Alina notices a little shop that sells cute little outfits, so they go into it. Takumi gets a bunch of hair ties for her and buys both the kids a lot of new drippy outfits. Later that night in bed, Takumi is wondering what kind of special gift he should get for Alan since he got Alina the hair ties. He starts thinking about what kind of presents he got when he was young, but realizes that none of those things exist in this world. The next morning after the kids wake him up, they start walking around town, and they run into Loane, who tells them that it is finally time to go on that quest he had talked him into joining earlier. At the starting point, he meets another knight, Sir Isaac Rissner, who is also gonna be joining them on the quest. He doubts the kids' power, and Loane tries to assure him that they are strong, but the kids get pretty scared of him instead. They go into the same carriage as the two knights, and just as they are about to enter the carriage, both Takumi and the kids feel a very disturbing look on them but can't seem to figure out where it is coming from. In the carriage, they talk for a while and everything calms down and goes back to normal. After a while, they finally reach the forest of Gaia, and Takumi meets all of the other adventurers too. They start walking through the forest, and Alan and Alina seem to have already turned their GPS scanners on because they start telling everyone else where the monsters are coming from. Soon enough, the monsters come from exactly where the kids said they would, and it turns out to be a lone red wolf. Out of nowhere, Alan and Alina run in and smack the living crap out of the wolf, and everyone is super flabbergasted about how the kids are so OP since he is pretty embarrassed by all of the looks. Takumi tells them that they should just chillax for a while, and let him handle everything. Loane comes to Takumi all confused about what just happened, and Takumi reminds him that the two kids smacked up an ugly, disgusting sea-level adventurer in the guild when he met them for the first time. Loane starts thinking about how the kids even survived alone in the forest of Gaia in the first place. The whole gang continues their journey, and all of a sudden the kids start running around collecting random herbs like the true confused weirdos they are. Takumi and Loane try to explain to the kids that they shouldn't run around too much on their own, but Loane gives them the green light to do it as long as they are able to find their way back. After a while, they stumble upon some random moss, which is good for treating some itchy problems. Isaac and Loane start arguing, and while they are yapping, Takumi and the kids snatch all of the moss up. After a long time, Isaac is still giving Loane a lesson, so Takumi decides to stop their useless asses from arguing and tells the kids to bring Isaac some of the moss. After continuing their journey, the whole party encounters a gang of orcs, and they start smashing them up like a bunch of wet avocados. Loane is pretty suspicious about how Takumi is so OP since he is only E rank. He even orders one of the other adventurers, Rudolph, who is a high-ranking adventurer, to ask the guild master to level Takumi's tier up. Meanwhile, everyone thinks that it is pretty weird that they have already fought a bunch of monsters despite not going very deep into the forest at all. On top of that, only one red wolf appeared, and they think that this might be a bad omen. The kids remember that they are actually supermassive black holes and ask Takumi for some snacks, and the whole party decides that it is time for a little rest. Takumi whips out some of those bussin' pastries he made, and Loane goes crazy for them since they have become pretty much all the rage in the town. Loane forgets all of his morals and tries to steal the bread from the poor kids, and Takumi stops him, instead popping a whole bunch more from his inventory to feed the whole crew. Just as they have finished their epic meal, they see a help flare coming from the middle of the forest, and they quickly investigate. Out of nowhere, Takumi summons a massive tornado, and he and the two kids start going at the speed of Sonic, practically teleporting into the middle of the forest, right into random adventurers fighting with the big bad brothers of the Red Wolves, the Blood Wolves. In no time, Takumi whips out a cool sword, and together with Alan and Alina they completely destroy the wolves. Just then, the rest of their party reaches them, and Loane almost gets a heart attack after seeing that they have managed to unalive Blood Wolves in a few minutes, saying that he is even more powerful than he imagined while slapping him on the back. The kids certainly don't like this slapping, and Isaac gives them the green light to beat Loane's red-headed ass if he were to do something sus. Takumi agrees and only urges them to pull their punches because he knows that they are about a gazillion times more powerful than Loane. Upon hugging the kids, both they and Takumi realize that they still feel the very disturbing presence they felt earlier that day. That night, the whole party decides to have a little break, and Takumi sees this as the perfect opportunity to show everyone his sick cooking skills. After seeing that the knights are legit putting a massive slab of meat into a pot of water, and then just seasoning it with salt, he whips out his trusty kitchen utensils and starts giving the poor knights lessons in cooking, and they end up making a super bussin' looking stew for all the knights to enjoy. The next morning, after feeding all of their hungry asses, Takumi and the party continue their journey through the forest. They are all still discussing that the journey and the spawning of monsters has been pretty sus so far. All of a sudden, a massive snake jumps up from a tree and attacks them. The knights try to fight it with some earth magic, but the snake is a wiggly bastard and is dodging everything like crazy. Takumi tells Alina and Alan not to join the fight because he is worried that they'll get hurt. The Ooga Booga brain dudes from the party try to hack away at the snake with their axes, but it's not working at all. Takumi decides to take matters into his OP hands and starts slicing the snake up with his wind magic. Loane comes at it with his fire magic sword, but they are all super useless. Alan and Alina, given that they are also completely useless, jump onto the snake and start riding it. The snake gets distracted and looks at them as if they were two massive protein bars. This gives Takumi enough time to stab it with a little dagger, but they all get distracted by the feeling of a weird gaze again, and the snake eats Alan and Alina. Takumi gets super pissed and starts charging a dollar store raisin shuriken towards the snake, which leads to it being cut up into tiny little snake slices. However, everything around them starts falling apart too, because Takumi's magic seems to have cut up the entire forest. The party figure out that the snake venom is worth a shitload of cash and is also very rare, so they immediately all hurl at the opportunity to gather it up. Alan and Alina, on the other hand, are absolutely fine and are legit perhaps even less injured than they were before the fight with the snake. As everybody is celebrating the win against the snake, Takumi feels the disturbing gaze once again and goes sicko mode, deciding that enough is enough. He finds the dude whose gaze he and the kids have been feeling the whole time and, no questions asked, puts a sword to his neck. Loane comes to investigate, and it turns out that he knows the guy whose name is Sasage's. Rudolph has also noticed that he has been looking at poor old Takumi with unaliving intentions the whole time. It turns out, however, that the dude is just super closeted and is actually just pissed at the fact that Takumi has been spending so much time with Loane since he is absolutely all the way gay for him. Isaac confirms that he is super gay, and Takumi gets a little flabbergasted. Poor Loane tries to explain that he likes girls, but that ain't even close to enough to push Sasage's away. After a few hours, Isaac starts apologizing to Takumi about the fact that they put the kids in danger, and Takumi says that he will forgive their useless selves this one time. The entire party is practically gonna get unalive from hunger, so Takumi decides to whip up one of his classic orc stews. Everyone is super happy and gobbles it all up with no problem, and even the knight comes down while they are eating. While Takumi is admiring what kind of new OP skills Sil put into his character skills, Loane approaches him and tells him that they are gonna be leaving the forest soon and that Takumi will be able to claim his rewards in the guild when they return. The next day at the guild, the girl welcomes him and immediately gets super down bad for all the new loot he must have brought from the forest. Before that though, Takumi finally meets the dude in charge of the guild, and he decides to make him an A rank because Loane and all the dudes hyped him up like crazy. However, the guild master is pretty bamboozled as to what he should do with the kids rank because he is pretty worried that some people will get super pissed at the fact that two random looking kids are highly rated. Takumi suggests that their ranks be pushed to D so that their party averages a C rank. just enough to keep taking some easier quests. And the guild master also gives Takumi the B rank instead of A. After they finish this, the girl at the guild asks about the labyrinth and if they manage to complete it. Takumi says that they have and asks the girl to keep it a secret, even though she got slightly excited just thinking about the fact that they did it in record time. She gives them the rewards for the Forest of Gaia quest and finally asks poor old Takumi to give her all of the juicy loot he picked up in the forest. Takumi gives the guild a bunch of the snake's body and a whole lot of the loot, and the girl is basically gonna explode from happiness. Alan, Alina, and Takumi then realize that they are pretty tired from carrying their useless party the past few days, so they go to their inn to have a nice rest. The following morning, Takumi chillaxes on a field while the kids and the animals run around playfully. Alan and Alina start talking about how cool it would be if they could talk to the animals, and Takumi is also down for the idea, and tries to think of a way they could do that. A couple of hours later in their inn, Takumi realizes that the kids are seriously lacking in classic schooling, so he tries to teach their dumbass some math by making them do some unpaid work in the form of counting all of the fat cash they earned on their quests. The kids quickly realize that typical schooling is really not for them, so they all decide to have a little walk around town. While the poor kids might think that they've managed to get out of math, Takumi takes them to a woman selling fruit and makes them buy it themselves, giving them some very practical math testing. The kids somehow manage to buy the food and get the right amount of change back, and they all leave to go to the bookstore. There, Takumi figures out that Syl has now put some more opus water magic in his skill set, and tries to find a book where he can learn how to actually use it. While he's there, he figures out it is prime time to try to teach the kids some reading skills too, and gets a few books so they can practice. The next day, Alan, Alina, and Takumi go to the guild to take a new quest because they have become mega bored with school business. They feel pretty out of practice though, so they take up an easy quest in the form of finding a random black and white cat that has gotten lost. After searching for a while and coming across about 1 million different kinds of cats, they finally find it behind some barrels. Takumi immediately whips out some milk from his inventory and gives it to the cute little cat. After returning the cat to her owner, the girl at the guild tells them that she has a special quest for them to go to a nearby village and smack some orc cheeks. After meeting with the village chief, he outright tells Takumi that he thinks that it is lame that the town sent such losers to take care of their orc problems. However, realizing that his alternative is getting his and his entire village's ass handed to them by the orcs, he accepts Takumi, Alan, and Alina's services. The kids, as well as Jewel, Feet, and Bolt, start beating the living crap out of the orcs, and almost all of them have been unalived in the first 3 minutes of them being in the village. Takumi comes across a massive orc that he scans with his dollar store Pokédex and figures out that he is some kind of special king orc. This, however, doesn't stop Alan and Alina from dropkicking him into the ground. After they have beaten all of the orcs, Jewel walks up to Takumi and straight up starts yapping. Takumi gets really confused, and Jewel explains that he beat so many orcs that he literally just developed telepathy skills out of nowhere. Jewel insists on calling him Master, but Takumi really doesn't like this, as all the people in his life either call him Master, Bro, or Daddy, and it's getting really weird really fast for him. Everyone agrees to call him Taku, making him feel satisfied. It turns out that all of the animals have managed to develop telepathy, and all of them start talking to each other happily. Out of nowhere, the whole gang sees that a fire has started in front of one of the village houses, and useless old Takumi finds this the perfect moment to test out the new water magic that he had started learning about the previous night. He prepares to let out a massive water ball load jutsu, but ends up flopping and making practically a microscopic atom of a water ball. He figures that it must have been a fluke, and he tries again but somehow makes an even sadder ball than the first time. The third time, he gathers all of his strength and manages to make not one but 2 mega sad water balls. At the end, completely defeated, he just asks Jewel to extinguish the fire for him. Once they return home and gather their reward, Takumi figures that the kids must be tired from all the studying, smacking orcs up and walking around. But it turns out that they want him to read them a picture book. He tries explaining the concept of the ocean and fish to them, but the kids have no idea what that is, so the next day after waking up, Takumi goes to talk to Isaac and Loane and tells them that he is gonna be leaving the town for a while to show the kids some of the world that they still haven't seen. Before that, he goes to say goodbye to all the people in the town they have met. He says goodbye to the girl at the guild first, and she practically starts leaking from sorts of places just thinking about all of the new rare materials they will bring from foreign lands. Takumi and the kids also visit the bakery and give them a couple of new ingredients to keep their breads fresh AF. After that, Takumi takes the kids to the clothes shop and buys them some fresh new summery drippy outfits. Before finally leaving town, he goes to the shrine to talk to Syl, and he tells him also that he is gonna be leaving. Just as they are about to leave the town gates, Takumi and the kids come across a super fat Kirby looking doofus who claims that he is actually their rightful owner. He explains to them that he tossed the kids off of his smuggling carriage in the forest of Gaia to save his sorry ass. And Alan and Alina are trembling with fear. Takumi is a nice goody two-shoes, and even with this idiot, he still tries to act nice and tells him that Alan and Alina are his brothers and sisters. He quickly deduces that while unpaid work exists in this country, Alan and Alina have no such marks on their bodies. The fat ass just continues yapping and shouting, and Takumi starts contemplating wiping his ugly face off the face of the earth. He manages to calm himself down and protect Alan and Alina, and at just that moment, the patrol gets there and the true idiot cops try to rectify the situation. The fat dude still keeps arguing that the kids are his merch, and Takumi calls him out and asks for any proof that the kids are actually his. Out of nowhere, the ever-protective Isaac and Loine come up, and the fat dude gets arrested in no time. They say that they are willing to testify that the kids and Takumi are brothers and sisters. Takumi tells the kids that they will always be safe with him, and just before they finally leave, Isaac gives him a letter, which is an invitation to court from the Lord of Bailey. He says that he personally knows him and that Takumi and the kids are more than welcome to go to his castle. Takumi and the kids finally set off to find the ocean like a wannabe Iren, and they first go into a forest, where Takumi spawns all of the animals so they can get there faster. He gives Bolt the task of flying above them in case any NPCs start following them. Very soon, they come across a massive bloody bear which the animals dispatch of, no questions asked. After doing this, they require a whole bunch of petting from the kids as a reward. Takumi, like the true boomer parent, gets super worried about the fact that Jewel and Feet are playing with the kids after just biting a massive bloody bear to the point of unalivement. So he casts a cleaning jutsu on them and cleans them super easily. A few hours later, they get out of the forest of Gaia and decide to call it a night. When asked what they want for dinner, the kids reply with cream bread, but Takumi ain't an idiot and decides not to give them sweets for dinner, and instead makes them a super bussin' meal like the Gordon Ramsay wannabe he is. After the kids and the animals have all fallen asleep, Takumi just stares at the beautiful sky and thinks about how much time had passed from when he came to this world and remembers all the Gucci things that have been happening to him since he got here. The next day, they finally arrive at the ocean, and Alan and Alina's hungry ass' first reaction is to try to eat the water. Takumi tries explaining to them that it is salty, but it would be easier for him to explain this to a Big Mac, so they go and taste the water anyway, and they find it absolutely disgusting. Instead of eating, they decide playing in the water is much more fun, so the whole gang of animals joins them. As Takumi is looking at their careless existence playing in the ocean, he sees a girl in the ocean and immediately gets all kinds of ideas, so he goes in closer to investigate. She turns out to be a massive melon mermaid named Melona. Oops, I meant Melena, and Takumi almost gets a heart attack just thinking about what her legs and fins may look like. She calls him Sir Takumi and tells him that she has basically been sent to find him by a servant of the water god because they heard that he is super opus to help them solve a problem. She even knows who Alan and Alina are, and they are beyond flabbergasted that someone could recognize them. Melena explains that their village is underwater, and Takumi gets mega scared because he can't really swim even though he is 28. Instead of laughing her fishy little butt off that a grown man can't swim, she gives them special bracelets which allow them to breathe underwater and swim around with no problems. They jump into the ocean, and it takes a little for them to get adjusted to moving around in the water, but Takumi quickly gets distracted by the fact that Melena is even fishier and scalier than he ever imagined and starts looking at her like an animal in a zoo. She seems down bad for some zoo watching action and doesn't really seem to mind, so they all set off for the mermaid village. After swimming for a while, Takumi starts asking Melena about what kind of monsters live around there because the last thing he needs is to fight something while barely being able to move around. She tells him that there aren't many scary monsters, only really useless ones like sand crabs and hammerhead sharks. Very soon after that conversation, they encounter a hammerhead shark, and the kids make like a nail and hammer its shark at home. They also encounter the sand crabs too, but the kids send them to their sandy graves in no time. A little swimming later, they finally reach the mermaid village, and they glance at how beautiful it is. Before taking them to the palace, Milena quickly takes them to show them the reason they have been brought to the village in the first place. A tiny dollar store Titanic has sunk right on top of their coral farm entrance, and given that the mermaid village dudes are super weak, they still haven't managed to move it out of the way. Takumi, however, has been gifted with the most opus powers of all time and just straight up slurps the boat up into his inventory, essentially solving their super hard problem in a few seconds. Out of nowhere, a bunch of mermaids come to the cave and immediately go to collect corals because it is really necessary for some mermaid meds. A while later, Milena finally brings Takumi and the kids to meet the high priestess, and she basically looks like she could be the kids' mom. She welcomes them, and Takumi immediately starts thanking her for treating them so royally and acting formally. All of the mermaid people seem to lack a few brain cells but are really happy that Takumi has solved the coral cave issue. Takumi, on the other hand, gets ever so slightly panicked that the water god servant who gave the mermaid people the info on Takumi and the kids has revealed their identities and said a little too much. Luckily, the high priestess assures him that their secret is safe. However, she is very down bad for a little Takumi, saying that he seems like a really kind person. Her advisor Galdo tells her to calm down a little since Takumi is getting a little weirded out by her stand behavior. After doing her best to explain to dumbass-ridden Takumi what her position really entails, she remembers that it would probably be good to give him some kind of reward for taking care of the ship. Takumi, of course, being the humble idiot he is, tries to refuse, but suddenly remembers that these water dudes may be exactly what he needs to fix his horrible water magic. So he asks them to train Alan, Alina, and him to properly use water magic. The priestess agrees but tells him that they'll do it for free and give them a different gift instead. They lead them to a massive storage room and show them an absolutely insane amount of cool loot and a crap ton of massive peels. It turns out the mermaid people are actually kinda stupid and that this is actually their landfill because they have absolutely no idea what any of this stuff is or what it does. They think that the pearls are random things that they sometimes have to get out of oysters in order to eat them. As he always does, Takumi slurps everything into his inventory, and the kids decide to spend the night at the cool underwater palace. Later that night, at dinner, it turns out that, while a little lacking in the intelligence department, the mermaid people surprisingly know how to make bussin' food. After dinner, Takumi takes the kids over to a window, and they watch the wildlife in the sea. The kids aren't too smart either, and they can't quite grasp the concept of an aquarium. The next day, when they wake up, Galdo and the priestess take them to a random rock in the middle of the ocean to practice some water magic. Galdo very quickly realizes that they have no idea what mana and energy really are, so he starts from the very basics. He goes full on avatar mode and starts explaining that fire and water bending are the toughest types of bending you could do because most of the time on land, you won't be surrounded by fire or water, whereas you're pretty much always surrounded by air and earth. Takumi tries waterbending and creates a massive water pillar, scaring the life out of poor Alina and Alan. With them, given that they are very confused about even the concept of mana, he starts from the very beginning. He tells them to search for warmth inside them, and they manage to get a hold of their mana. They take a little bit of water in their hands and are already able to make some water balls and are much better at it than their useless daddy Takumi. Once they have all mastered the basics, Galdo tells them to start creating some water balls and start destroying pillars around them. All three of them turn out to be super opus and start destroying the pillars like crazy. Galdo and the priestess leave them be, and the three of them train alone for a few hours. Meanwhile, Syl is getting pretty pissed at the water god servant for telling the mermaid dudes anything about Takumi in the first place. She starts apologizing like crazy, and Syl keeps getting more and more jealous of the water god because he seems to be having more interactions with Takumi anyway. After Takumi and the kids have finished training, out of nowhere, a massive leviathan dragon appears out of the ocean. The dragon casually starts talking to Takumi, and he tells him that Alan and Alina are actually kids of the water god. Takumi is a bit surprised, and the dragon really can't believe that he hasn't figured it out yet. The dragon says that it is his job to protect them and that he wants to form a contract with Takumi. Takumi gives him a very NPC name, Kaiser, so that he can summon him whenever he wants to. The contract forms, but all of a sudden, the dragon decides to take the poor little kids away from Takumi, saying that he is clearly the one who is able to protect them better. The kids start crying like a bunch of babies and cling to Takumi's legs, not wanting to leave their new daddy. As it turns out, the dragon was just testing their sorry asses, and he leaves them be, concluding that Takumi is the best daddy the kids could have asked for. The dragon is pretty impressed and tells Takumi that he will always be available for any advice, although he doesn't know anything about being a daddy. On top of this, he gives them a piece of his massive scales, which contain his magic, so that he can always be with them. He offers them a ride back to the palace, and all three of them enjoy the beautiful scenery on their way back. As they finally arrive at the palace and say their goodbyes to the dragon, the kids grab Takumi's hand, not even aware that they could have just now been shipped away to go with a very random dragon. Instead, they just say that their asses are both tired and hungry, so they go back to the palace to get their grub on. When they go into the palace, Milena and the priestess welcome them back all happy, knowing that the IQ of the palace has just gone up with their arrival. The kids almost splurt out that they rode back on a dragon, but Takumi quickly salvages the situation by saying that it was actually a fish. The kids also say that it was all really sparkly because they traveled through a massive cloud of sea snow, which was really beautiful and sparkly. The priestess and Milena invite them in to have a funky little sleepover, but Takumi and the kids just want to get on their merry way. The two girls sort of reluctantly accept and give them a parting gift, and Takumi and the kids head home. On the way home, the kids smack up a few sand crabs, and out of nowhere, they stumble upon a very hidden underwater labyrinth. Given that they have nothing better to do, they decide to go in and investigate. In the first room, they find a teleportation device, and Takumi deduces that, given that there are 30 floors, there must be a teleportation device on every 10 floors. He thinks that about 10 floors should be enough to see what the labyrinth is all about, after which they'll return to town. Before that, of course, Takumi remembers that he hasn't cosplayed Gordon Ramsay in a while, and gets some food out of his inventory so the three of them can have a bite to eat before going deeper into the dungeon. After eating, the kids start leading the way, as usual, and they meet some mega weak creatures on the way, such as some weird poison frogs, which Takumi practically one-shots. They start walking down some other corridors, and the kids sniff out a secret room with their sneaky little noses. After going into the secret room, they find about a gazillion red prawns chilling inside a chest, which Takumi puts in his inventory, and they keep finding more and more seafood in every chest they find. After running around the whole day, they all get pretty tired and hungry, and Takumi decides to make a meal out of the heaps of seafood they found along the way. One delicious seafood stew later, they decide to take the rest of the night off and sleep a little. The next morning, they wake up and continue their journey throughout the dungeon, only to find more useless weak mobs such as random clams. The kids want to do what they always do and smash them to pieces, but Takumi tells them that the clams emit a special shockwave that will blast them to pieces if they are close, so the kids decide to use their ranged water ball jutsu instead and absolutely destroy the clams. Meanwhile, Takumi decides to check to see if the kids have leveled up at all, and he sees that they have indeed. He gets a little worried since they have almost reached his level. After unaliving the clams, the kids find a party popper. Given that they were wild forest children only a few months ago, they've got no idea what it is, and Takumi gives them a quick demonstration, absolutely horrifying them. They unalive a few more clams after that and continue taking the party poppers, thinking that it may be worth something one day. After a while, they get to the 10th floor, which has a mini boss room on it. Takumi and the kids enter the room, and they immediately start running across a pretty sus-looking bridge. Out of nowhere, some very weird pointy-looking fish jump up and start attacking the poor kids like there was no tomorrow. Luckily, the kids and Takumi do their thing and destroy the living crap out of the fish in no time, unaliving more than 100 of them at once. Once the last of the pointy fish met its pointy end, a massive door appeared in the room so they could move on. Before going through, they figure out that the fish have actually dropped a whole bunch of loot that they could pick right up. Out of nowhere, Alan notices something in the water, and being the really good caretaker that he is, Takumi quickly scans the water and concludes that they should be able to jump in without any monster gobbling them up. At the bottom of the water pool, they find a chest with the same water-breathing bracelet Milena had given them when they first met, which prompts Takumi to think that they must be much rarer than they seem. After this little sidetrack, they finally go through the door and find the teleporter device and decide to call it a day, and start heading to Bailey City, as the Lord of Bailey invited them according to Isaac. After a while, they finally get to the shores of Bailey City and immediately feel giga hungry like the supermassive black holes they are. They find a dude on the street selling some scallops, but Takumi ain't gonna let such a bland meal ruin his day, so he asks the dude if he could make his own sauce. The dude is a bit fearful of where Takumi might produce his sauce from, but agrees. Takumi proceeds to make a butter and soy sauce ranch for the scallops, and everyone goes absolutely crazy about it. Takumi gives his patent to the dude running the shop, and he has a field day, ending the day having had the most customers he has ever had. Takumi tells him that he is going to have to find more soy sauce on his own, so he legit gets ready immediately and just sprints out of there. Continuing their journey through town, Takumi and the kids stumble upon a blacksmith and take the dragon scale to him to see if there is any way that it could be molded into anything smaller. Essentially, Takumi wants to make the shard into necklaces for him and the kids, and the shop owner and his son literally lose their shit when they find out the material is actually a water dragon scale. The son grabs a piece of paper and sketches up a rough drawing of what he thinks the necklace could look like. Takumi likes it very much, and they figure out that it would only look good with a frame of some sick material like mithril. Takumi then asks if the chain part could be made out of leather, but the dude tells him that it has to be some really expensive material called the mithril spider silk, and of course, Takumi casually whips out a shit ton of it from his inventory, and the shop owner and his son almost pass out. Takumi also asks the dude to make 2 more, a cute one for Alina, and Alan says that he would like whatever the dude chooses to make. On top of this, he gives them some more rare materials, which flabbergasts the dudes at the shop, and asks them to make him some armor and 2 arm covers for him and Alan so that Bolt can land on his arm with no problem. A few hours later, they all go to the shrine so that Takumi can talk to Sil. He tells him that they made it to Bailey and asks him what Alan and Alina's real daddy is up to and where he's at. Sil just keeps his fancy little mouth shut, so Takumi concludes that it is a secret. Out of nowhere, he starts congratulating Takumi, saying that he is finally officially his disciple. Takumi, however, truly doesn't really care, as Sil gives him the title of nurturing and education. Takumi starts laughing because Sil is so useless that even his own disciple has a symbol related to a different goddess. Sil starts saying that it is indeed really that he has got a blessing from the creator goddess Marianola instead of a cool symbol related to the wind. Sil also tells him that his stupid forgetful self forgot to give him some cool things from the fire god Sal since he was so happy that the bussin' foods Takumi made were spreading to the other countries as well, since cooking has always been his domain. Takumi decides that Sil has practically bored him to death and says his goodbyes to him, going with the kids to find an inn for the night. After they leave him, Sil starts feeling mega guilty about the fact he hasn't told Takumi that the water god Windell had Alan and Alina with a random Ateldia woman. When she gave birth to them, he remembered that he had forgotten to buy milk and just left the chat to create some more kids. His sulking is interrupted by Sal, who says that he will even give Takumi some contracted beasts too. The next day, Takumi and the whole gang of animals and the kids go to the beach to have some more fun and practice their puny water magic some more. All of a sudden, a massive fire-breathing lion comes up to them, and instead of his pants, Takumi realizes that this must be the contracted beast Sal had sent him. He must still be thinking about the math he had been teaching to the kids because Takumi decides to name him Vector. Vector is a pretty chill dude, and he immediately shrinks a little so Alan and Alina can play with him. Takumi tells the other animals that they should be his friends too, and they all start playing around on the beach. A little while later, while they are playing catch, instead of running after the ball, Vector runs all the way across the beach and brings them a random passed out woman in a maid outfit. Takumi starts panicking, thinking that it was him that unalived her, but quickly realizes that she was passed out when he found her. He hits her with his Inspect Element skill and realizes that she is a demon race vampire. Takumi remembers that the demon race is treated equally as any other race in Ateldia, which means that she wouldn't be hostile towards them when she wakes up. While he's thinking about what to do with her, Alan and Alina legit start poking her, and she is barely able to say that she is super hungry. Little did she know, she bumped into the man who has an entire Walmart worth of food in his inventory, so he whips out some rice balls and they all slurp them together in no time. She immediately starts acting goofy and starts poking her nose in places that she shouldn't, asking Takumi if he is the kid's dad, saying that she just loves getting to know people's secrets because she is a spy. She tells them that she is heading to the town of Albert, and that he dumbass had forgotten to bring any food for the journey, and instead of returning to get some food, she decided to try to continue their journey and Bear Grylls her way to the town. This led her as far as the beach, where she collapsed because of a lack of nutrients. Takumi cannot believe that such a dumb person could even exist, and she continues explaining that she had to investigate some royal dude and his wife's backstory, and it turned out that he was hiding a commoner woman in the mansion. The kids get mega flabbergasted when they hear this, and Takumi quickly reminds them that they don't even have any idea what that means. She continues explaining that the royal dude didn't even have any dirty intentions towards the girl, and that her maid outfit infiltration was completely pointless. As a thanks for giving her the food, she gives Takumi 2 bottles of some very naughty aphrodisiac liquid, leaves, and doesn't elaborate further. The kids immediately seize the opportunity to ask Takumi what the word dad means. He starts crapping bricks, not knowing what to say, so he tries by asking them if they know what a father is, thinking that they might know what it is since they have been calling him their big brother the whole time. They have absolutely no idea what it means and have only been calling him that due to the people in the town assuming that he is their brother. However, the kids seem to know that they are brother and sister to each other, so Takumi has some hope left. He tries to explain the concept of family and mom and dad, and the only thing the kids gather from the entire situation is that being born is epic, and they immediately go back to playing with the animals. Takumi basically gives out a sigh of relief that they didn't ask anything about their parents, but is pretty aware of the fact that they probably will one day. The next day, they decide to go to this town's guild and see what kind of fun quests they have. The girl working at the guild is super bamboozled about the fact that he's a rank adventurer and starts yapping about him finding a hidden underwater labyrinth, which attracts the whole guild to him and the kids. He tries to ask her not to draw any attention, but she can't stop shouting and yapping. A few moments later, Takumi, the kids, and the girl are in the guild master's office, and the girl is being punished profusely for telling everyone Takumi's private info. Takumi tells them some more about the underwater labyrinth and how to get to it, and the dude running the guild gets perplexed about how they managed to hold their breath to get there. Takumi decides not to say anything about the mermaid bracelet since that would come with a billion different questions, so he just casually starts capping about having an abnormal lung capacity, even though his dumbass can't even swim without magic. Takumi wants to get some rest with the kids, but the guild master tells him that they will have to meet with the provincial lord first thing tomorrow. Given that it was basically their plan to go to the lord anyway, Takumi and the kids go to the lord the very next day. It turns out that Isaac is actually the younger brother of the Bailey Lord Cedric, and they practically look as much alike as Alan and Alina. The kids say that Cedric looks a whole lot like Isaac, and Cedric starts reminiscing about the fact that he hasn't seen his brother in a long time. Cedric brings them to their massive living room, and the butlers start preparing some tea. The kids see some other kids kinda watching shyly from out of the room, and Cedric tells them that they are his fairies who live with him. Takumi starts explaining what they did in the Ripple Labyrinth and how they found it in the first place so Cedric's investigation team can go and see what it's all about. Apparently, in this world, the dungeons are a source of massive cash, and many adventurers go around them, grabbing the loot and making restaurants flourish because of the rare food-related loot inside the dungeons. The economy would also flourish in the territory where the dungeon has been found, so Cedric and his servant dudes are super happy about the fact that another one has been found in their territory. They all sip a little on their tea as Takumi realizes that Syl is actually constantly watching him at all times. Takumi continues asking Cedric about how the team he sent to the dungeon is doing, and he says that they are doing quite well so far. Cedric even offers Takumi a medal, which Takumi, being the anonymous asshole he likes being, politely refuses and even tries to make Cedric not announce the name of the Ripple Dungeon Finder. Cedric tells him that he will make a report for the king and urges him to take a medal with a smile so scary looking that Takumi almost shits himself just looking at it. Cedric starts going sicko mode, wanting to punish the guild staff for yapping on and on about Takumi's private info, but Takumi somehow manages to calm the situation down. Meanwhile, the kids go full on monkey see monkey do mode and start apologizing to each other, given that one of the dudes from the guild was just now practically kissing Cedric's shoes trying to avoid punishment. Cedric gets all flustered about the fact that it took long for Takumi and the kids to come to the mansion, but the kids explain that they visited the sea and not even such a weird dude like Cedric could keep a straight face looking at their cute little faces. A little later, they all go to lunch and they meet Cedric's family. It turns out that the fairies from earlier are actually his two sons, Theodore and Laddies. Alan and Alina get super shy because they have never met anyone their age before. They start having lunch, and Takumi is actually surprised that the food is so delicious, despite the fact that the only thing seasoning the cook's bland ass uses is salt. Cedric says that Isaac sent him a letter bragging his butt off about all of the bussin' new types of bread Takumi patented. He says that some of them that are easy to make also made their way to Bailey too. Cedric really doesn't want his brother to be better than him, so he even offers a reward to Takumi for telling him the recipes for the cream and red bean paste bread. Theodore and Laddies also really want to try them, but as Takumi doesn't have enough, he decides to make some jelly instead. Given that the people in this world would eat sand and call it a satisfying meal, they get super excited at the prospect of jelly. He gives them some jelly, and they all go ham for it, gobbling it up in an instant. However, when Takumi tells them they are literally made from the slime mobs, they almost wanna uneat the jelly but still can't deny how bussin' it really is. Cedric, however, the sly little bastard, immediately wants to boast to his brother about eating something Daddy Takumi made for him that even Isaac himself hadn't yet tried. Cedric even offers to buy the recipe from him and start selling jelly in their shops, even hatching a plan to start breeding some slimes. The children all go together to play, and they have fun for the whole day. The next morning after waking up, Takumi and the kids go to talk to Cedric, and he seems to be reading Isaac's reply to his letter bragging about the jelly. All of a sudden, Takumi goes full on shrink mode and figures out that the reason Isaac is always teasing poor old Loane is because Cedric teased him when they were young. Meanwhile, in the city of Shireen, Isaac is reading his brother's letters and is pretty silent because he is super jelly about the fact that Takumi made jelly for his brother and even super surprised that Takumi found a labyrinth too. They realize that the situation is about to escalate, so they have to somehow conceal his identity better since Takumi is raising all kinds of attention real fast. At the end of the very serious conversation, Isaac starts yapping about jelly and how he really wants to try it. At the same time, Takumi, all of the kids, and a very cosplay-heavy Cedric go to the town market to look around the place, and Cedric wants to show them a really popular dish that you have to wait a long time for. Alan and Alina see Cedric holding his children by their hands and start guilt-tripping their daddy Takumi into doing the same thing. Meanwhile, they finally reach the food stand, and it turns out that it's the stand Takumi made 1 billion times more popular by adding some soy sauce and butter to the mix. Takumi explains to clueless Cedric what soy sauce even is and how to get it, and they continue exploring around the town. At one of the stands, Alan and Alina's hungry cheeks recognize some red bean paste and immediately start craving some bread, making Theodore and Laddies super hungry for some little red bean paste breads. Takumi, however, gets distracted by the logo he sees on one of the bags on the stand and remembers that it is the exact same logo as the one he saw on that sunken ship he had slurped up into his inventory a while back. Very conveniently, out of nowhere, a random dude approaches Cedric, and it turns out that that dude is the owner of the sunken boat. Takumi, being the nice dude he is, straight up offers them just to give them the boat back, and they can't believe someone would do such a nice thing for no reward. They go outside of the market, and Takumi just straight up spawns the boat into the harbor, and the dude can't stop thanking him, even showing him some merch. There, Takumi finds all kinds of things that are like in the real world but have some weird funny names, like coffee beans. He also manages to find some herbs and spices, and he and the kids go back to the mansion, where he starts teaching everyone how to make curry. After making it, the entire mansion becomes interested, so Takumi makes a bunch more, and they all go to enjoy some bussin' homemade curry together. Everyone loves it, and Cedric starts waddling around the place like he's just had some different types of spices all together. Even the cook comes out of the kitchen and starts kissing Takumi's feet, and begging him to take him as his apprentice. Cedric starts laughing and saying that poor Takumi is an adventurer and is not gonna be taking up any apprentices, but he does say that he seems to be super talented and that he should maybe look into having a little bit of a career change sometime soon. Takumi laughs it off, and the cook tries one last time to beg him to become his apprentice. After lunch, Takumi and the kids are chilling in the living room with Theodore and Laddies, and they are really thirsty for some adventuring dragon-slaying tales. Takumi agrees and starts telling them the story of how they defeated monsters in the forest of Gaia. The kids are just bamboozled and look at him like he is some kind of OP fighter. He tells the kids that Alan and Alina are also strong as fuck, and Theodore and Laddies get super happy and can't believe it. But Alan and Alina get really shy and turn their cute little heads towards Takumi. The following day, Takumi and all of the kids go to the bakery because he promised Cedric he would make him some sick little bread too. They all work together and are super jolly, laughing the entire time and getting a lot of flour and crap everywhere. In the end, they manage to make a couple of new weird combinations, such as curry bread and coffee bread. The baker almost explodes on the spot from how delicious the breads are and starts asking Takumi to take him up as his apprentice immediately. They all laugh together and Takumi politely refuses again. A couple of days later, Takumi hears of a nice little mountain near the village and summons all of their animal friends to carry them there. Vector gets super pissed that Takumi decides that Feet and Jewel are going to be the ones to carry them to the mountain because he is pretty worried that Vector will end up throwing them off. They start making their way to the top of the mountain. As the road gets pretty narrow, Takumi asks Jewel and Feet to shrink down, but Vector can't really shrink anymore because he is a massive Giga Chad. Out of nowhere, a few good-for-nothing loser bandits jump out from behind some trees and want to smack them up so they can steal and sell poor Alan and Alina. However, they didn't quite realize that Vector was already pretty riled up, so he gave it his all and defeated their sorry ass in a few seconds. After tying them to a tree, Takumi and Vector start playing good cop bad cop and interrogate one of the criminals, who spills the beans about their secret cave where they keep the stolen goods immediately upon seeing Vector's beautiful face up close. After they go to the cave, they find some more bandits chilling in the cave, and Alan and Alina smash their heads in. They find a massive jail section of the cave with many poor women inside, along with an enormous treasure room, and Takumi, as usual, just control-clicks all of the items from the chest and they go right into his inventory. After they free all the poor women, Vector finally learns telepathy, and he immediately uses it by jumping on top of Takumi and asking him for praise. The next day, Takumi and the kids go to the blacksmith to get the cool pendants and armor that they have built for them. They find everything really sick, and Takumi spawns Bolt from his shadow to test out the arm protector. The blacksmith and his son almost have heart attacks when they see that it is not a normal hawk but a super rare thunder hawk. A few hours after this, they start walking towards the mansion, and literally every single person is glaring at the kids playing with a massive thunder hawk. In the mansion, Cedric asks Takumi if he found a silver-framed painting in the bandit treasury. Takumi takes a look at his ever-expanding inventory and sees that he does, and that it is quite an R18 painting. Alan and Alina, however, start discovering a whole bunch of new things about themselves, and they can't get their eyes off of it, so Takumi jumps in and begs Cedric to take it away as soon as possible. A while after this, Takumi takes a quick side quest and goes to the underwater palace and asks for 4 more bracelets so that his animals can breathe underwater too. They give them the bracelets with no problem, and Takumi and the kids go to finish the underwater dungeon they previously paused at level 10. While walking through the empty halls, Alan and Alina become super bored because nothing is happening. But all of a sudden, they start running in one direction and finally find 2 random lizards, which they smack up in a few seconds. After continuing, they find some more monsters that they take on with no problem, collect a bunch more chests, and call it a day. The next morning, as they progress in the dungeon, it gets colder and colder, so Takumi whips out 2 cute little mini coats that he bought for the kids earlier, and puts them on. Just then, a massive bear appears, which their opus ass defeat easily, and it drops some bear hide. Takumi takes it, immediately thinking of crafting it into cute little winter coats for Alan and Alina so that they will never be cold again. Unfortunately, to do this, they would need to find another one, so they go forward, hoping that another useless weak bear will pop up. Instead of a bear, however, around the first turn the kids find a massive turtle that spawns bubbles that explode if touched. Takumi turns on his big brain and becomes an absolute Sigma Giga Chad, as he just slurps the bubbles up into his inventory, clearing up the space between them and the turtle, allowing the kids to knock some sense into it. While searching for another bear, Alan and Alina trip up a billion traps, but try to act all cool and cute when Takumi confronts them about it. To make everything easier, they spawn the animals to carry them and smack the monsters up for them. After walking around for forever, they finally reach a massive door that leads them out onto a deserted island. Just next to the island, a massive kraken, aptly named Little Kraken, appears, and Takumi, Alan, and Alina try to take him head on, but he just keeps regenerating. Luckily, Feed is the only one with a brain around here, and he comes up with the idea that all of them should strike at the same time, which will not give him any time to regenerate. It works perfectly and the room disappears, leaving just a door that leads to a treasure room. Inside the chest in the room, Takumi finds a massive fire sword, and he has no idea if his Nepo baby ass could even use it, but takes it anyway. A few hours later, once they've gotten back to the mansion, Theodore and Laddies are practically gonna explode because of how much they can't wait to hear the stories about what had happened in the labyrinth. Alan and Alina are just about to start telling them the stories when out of nowhere, the absolute Giga Chads Loane and Isaac come out to surprise Takumi. After a little while, they all sat down in the living room with some tea like the rich bastards they are, and started talking about why Loane and Isaac are even here. They say that they've come to drag Takumi's sorry existence to the king so he can talk to him about the new dungeon he has discovered. Takumi asks the kids what they think, and they pretty much have one brain cell, so they accept it straight away. Takumi asks about when they would be going, and it turns out that it's gotta be tomorrow. He realizes that Alan and Alina's dumbass haven't realized that going now would mean saying goodbye to Theodore and Laddies, who have realized this and are sitting pretty sad on the couch. Instead of telling them anything, the genius Takumi takes the kids outside, and they all start playing with the turtle balls Takumi had collected earlier. Even Loane and Isaac join in and they all start having a great time. That night, after putting the kiddos to bed, Takumi goes to the living room for a boys' night, and Loane tells him that he thought that there was no way the kids would let him come to the boys' night. Takumi starts thinking about how it would actually be good if he and the kids got separated for a while, because they've now grown up and gotten used to strangers like the real daddy he is. Cedric asks if they're blood related, and Loane says that he is such a good daddy to them that it doesn't even matter if they are blood related or not. This leads to Takumi crying like a bitch and Loane pouring some more alcohol into his glass. The very next morning, once he tries to get them to leave, Alan and Alina start crying and saying that they want to stay here and play with Theodore and Laddies. Everyone, including Scylla Creep, watches over the entire situation and thinks that this must mean the trip is cancelled. But Takumi becomes an absolute Sigma and just says to the kids that they should stay at the mansion and play some more. Everybody is surprised, and they keep asking Takumi if he's sure, but his sureness is as wobbly as a drunk dude walking him alone from a bar, and after Alina and Alan start running towards him he breaks. The animals jump out of the shadow too, and all of them start hugging, saying how they don't want to be separated. Takumi explains to Alan and Alina that they can come too, but that they have to say goodbye to Theodore and Laddies for now, which they do, only crying a little. A little while later, Takumi and his two kiddos are on a horse going steadily towards the capital, all happy that they're gonna be part of new adventures. This brings us to the end of Takumi's wholesome adventures as a full-time daddy in Ateldia. Thanks for sticking around until the end, you absolute legend. Like, subscribe, and click on the screen to watch some of our other exciting videos. Until next time, stay awesome, stay AniGeek.